On Halloween Eve in 1975, a 15-year-old girl named Martha Moxley was murdered on her own lawn in Greenwich, Connecticut, with a 6-iron golf club. But the most shocking part isn't the brutality. It's that the club belonged to her neighbors, the Skakels, who just happened to be the nephews of Ethel Kennedy.
Wait, the Kennedy family? As in the American political dynasty?
Exactly. And because of that connection, it took 27 years to get a conviction, only for the entire legal case to vanish into thin air decades later.
So we have a dead teenager, a famous family, and a murder weapon from a country club set. This sounds like a movie, not a cold case.
To understand this, you have to look at Belhaven. In the mid-70s, this was a gated enclave of extreme wealth where the police rarely had to do more than direct traffic at weddings.
The kind of place where people think they're above the law because they basically own the town.
Precisely. On October 30th, what the locals called Mischief Night, Martha Moxley went over to the Skakel house, which was right across the street. The Skakels were living a chaotic, high society life. Their father, Rushton, was Robert F. Kennedy's brother-in-law.
Who was actually at the house that night?
A house full of teenagers, including Michael and Thomas Skakel, and a newly hired live-in tutor named Kenneth Littleton. Martha was last seen near the Skakel driveway around 9:30 p.m., reportedly flirting with the older brother, Thomas.
And she never made it home.
No. The next morning, her mother found her body under a pine tree. She'd been beaten so hard with a golf club that the metal shaft shattered, and the killer used a jagged piece of that shaft to stab her through the neck.
Okay, the police find a shattered golf club. Don't they just check the neighbors' bags?
They did. They found a matching set of Tonya 6-irons inside the Skakel home, with one club missing. But here is where the Kennedy factor kicks in. The Skakel family immediately clammed up, the police investigation was criticized as timid, and the case went frozen for 15 years.
15 years of nothing? How does a case like this just wake up?
It took a novelist and a disgraced detective. In the 90s, Dominic Dunn wrote a book inspired by the murder, and later, Mark Furman, the guy from the O.J. Simpson trial, published a true crime book pointing the finger directly at the younger brother, Michael Skakel.
Why Michael? I thought Thomas was the one flirting with her.
Michael's alibi was shaky, and suddenly, former classmates from a reform school he attended began coming forward. They claimed Michael had spent years boasting, saying, "I'm going to get away with murder. I'm a Kennedy."
That is a hell of a confession if it's true, but sounds like total hearsay.
It was enough for a grand jury. In 2002, nearly 30 years after Martha died, Michael Skakel was finally convicted of murder and sentenced to 20 years to life.
Case closed then? Justice served?
Not even close. Michael spent 11 years in prison while his legal team tore into his original defense lawyer, Michael Sherman. They argued Sherman was so focused on being a celebrity lawyer that he missed key alibi witnesses and failed to point the finger at other suspects, like the tutor or the older brother.
So the conviction gets tossed because his own lawyer was bad at his job?
Multiple times. Between 2013 and 2020, the case was a legal seesaw. The conviction was vacated, then reinstated by the state Supreme Court, then vacated again in a stunning reversal.
So where does it stand today? Is Michael Skakel in a cell or at the country club?
He's a free man. In 2020, 45 years to the day after the murder, the state of Connecticut announced they wouldn't retry him. Too many witnesses were dead, the evidence was degraded, and the Kennedy aura had essentially outlasted the prosecution.
It feels like the wealth did exactly what everyone feared it would. It bought enough time for the truth to rot.
It's the ultimate example of how the American legal system treats a mischief night murder differently when it happens behind a gilded gate. It shows that effective counsel is sometimes the difference between a life sentence and a walk in the park.
And Martha's family?
Her mother, Dorothy, spent 45 years in courtrooms. In the end, she had a conviction in her hand, and then watched it dissolve into a not guilty by default.
What's the one thing to remember about the Martha Moxley case?
That in the overlap of high society status and high-stakes crime, the clock is often a better defense than any alibi.
That's Wikipedia. Every story on demand. Search your next topic at wikipedia.ai.